Hello everyone, today I'll be making a video about the VHD format, which was actually released in Japan. Now there were plans to release it in the United States. Now I have seen quite a few that would be like test video discs. You'll find those on eBay, they're incredibly expensive. But there were plans to release this format in the United States, but that actually never happened. Unfortunately, now this format compared to others, it does have its upsides as well as its downsides. Now I really want to focus on this particular title right here. Now this is Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. That would be Dream Warriors. Now this format actually was sold and manufactured a lot longer than the CED video disc format. For example, this specific title right here, you won't find this title on the CED format, unfortunately. Now this one is quite rare. Now this had been on my Yahoo Auctions list for about a year before I received an email regarding it. So I bought it right away. This was actually a auction sale. It got pretty hectic. Now I actually won this auction, and there was quite a few bidders on this auction. I actually paid $214 for this disc, which I think it's worth it because of its rarity, specifically because I happen to love this series, the Nightmare on Elm Street series, because I happen to love both the horror and the sci-fi films. And regarding horror films, the Nightmare on Elm Street series, it's an absolute must in anyone's collection. It has a wonderful story behind it. It has wonderful nostalgia regarding the 80s and the early 90s. That would be the music that was used around that time. The clothing, the styles, it's all in the film. It's a very fun film to watch because it has a lot of comedy as well as very gruesome, very weird horror, which it's part of our imagination. I mean, beyond a documentary film, beyond a drama, these horror and sci-fi films, I love them. They're wonderful, wonderful stories. All right, let me really focus on this right here. Now, I'm gonna do quite a few things. I'm gonna deviate quite a bit, which is fine. I've said this in the past. YouTube, it's the best. You can deviate as much as you want. All right. Now, this is my kitchen table. Like I said in the past, I don't consider myself a professional, but I always try my best. As you can see, I have a few different machines here. Now these machines are actually not part of the VHD format. They're part of the CED format, which was released in the United States, both in the United States as well as Europe. Actually, that's another reason why this title is so special to me. The fact that this format was only released in Japan means that there weren't many of them made. The fact that the CED format was released both in the United States as well as Europe means that these are actually a lot, they're not as difficult to find, not as difficult to acquire. Also, the prices are a lot different. All right, first of all, let me really focus on this video, because this is pretty much the main reason why I'm making this video. Now, you won't find many images regarding this particular title in this format. For example, there is a wonderful online website called the Laserdisc database. It documents of quite a few formats. That would be, for example, this, which is the VHD. It also documents the Laserdisc. Absolutely. I mean, it is called the Laserdisc database. This is the Laserdisc. John Carpenter's The Thing. I happen to love this film for quite a few reasons. This was actually shown a few days ago in theaters. Believe it or not, it was the 40th anniversary of this film. It's a wonderful thing to know. For a video that, a film that's so old and so iconic like this to be shown in theaters, it was amazing. All right, so the Laserdisc database does in fact document this format, which is the Laserdisc. It also documents the CED format, which I also collect. I think it's a very fun format to use. It's special because every single time that you play these guys, you actually place more wear and tear on the disc itself. So whenever I use these guys, I try to avoid pressing the pause button. I try to avoid rewinding or fast forwarding. That would be queuing. I just play them through because I know every single playback is precious. I try to enjoy every single second when I play back a CED video disc. And also, the Laserdisc database also documents that would be the D-Theater format. I don't have many D-Theater films. I do have quite a few. Let me go ahead and just bring one. Alright, that didn't take too long. I live in a tiny little studio. Now the Laserdisc database does document this format. That would be the D-Theater, which is actually a digital VHS format. This is Independence Day. Like I told you, I happen to love both horror and sci-fi films. This is obviously sci-fi. It's nice and sealed. Alright. Now on that database, the Laserdisc database, there are some titles which unfortunately they don't have the images for the disc themselves. This is definitely one of them. Now you will find this on that database, but it doesn't have the image because it's so rare. Also, there is no history regarding both the prices and availability. For example, on some titles, it actually tells you where to buy them. For example, eBay, Yahoo Auctions. Unfortunately, regarding this specific disc, there is no price history and there is no physical image. Now, I am going to open this. I'm going to show you the inside insert, which also, it's like nowhere to be found online. I really want to show this in a lot of detail, not just via images, via a video. A video is wonderful. You can give a lot more detail, a lot more impact, a lot more information. I'm going to give you a whole lot of my own personal opinion regarding all of these formats. Now, the condition of this disc, it's amazing. It actually has its original plastic covering. It even has, they call this the hype sticker, where it actually gives you a little bit more information regarding this. For example, it has a price. Obviously, the price is in Japanese yen. 4,950. Obviously, that's not dollars because that would be a whole staggering price. Okay, now this is if you happen to love this film and you really want to collect it in this format, this is something wonderful to know. Every single video disc in this format, the VHD format, it had a sort of number to it, which really helps you to find it online via online stores. Now, this specific video disc is the VHP 49517. If you plan to collect this specific title in this format, I would definitely save that number right there. It'll really help you. The condition is amazing. I mean, there are no dents in the corners. They're all nice and well treated. Okay, I gotta tell you something about Japanese secondhand item sales. Now, I buy from all over the world. I buy from Australia, I buy from Russia. Now, it has become very difficult to import items from Russia lately. You know why. I also buy from Europe, I buy from Canada, I buy from all over the world. That would be media, physical media. I happen to love the physical media. It's something very special. To be able to hold something like this, to show it off, is something that you really can't do if you watch something via online streaming services, because there's no physical item that you own. You're just streaming data. This is a little bit more special to me specifically. Okay, now obviously this is Warner Home Video, which is interesting. Okay, now I love the fact that the VHD format, they don't use the exact same coverings, for example, on their Laserdiscs, on the, for example, Beta. This is a beta videotape, which I also collect, which I also use. Now this format, it existed alongside many other formats. It also existed around when beta existed. So you were able to buy both of these formats around the same time. Well, since I have these up here right now, I'm going to tell you both the upsides and downsides. Now, obviously this one, the beta format has more resolution, for sure. This has more resolution than the VHD format. But this has its advantages as well. For example, on this format, you'll never get, for example, mold, because this is videotape. This is magnetic videotape. This absolutely hates moisture. This is not magnetic videotape. This is actually they call it, it's played with a stylus. So as long as you keep it safe inside of its caddy, it'll be fine. Now, obviously, the advantage of this format, it's a lot smaller, more compact. You can have a lot more of these titles compared to this. This takes a lot of more, you can call it real estate space. Another thing, you have to rewind this guy. And you don't have to rewind this one because you can just go ahead and start all over from the start. All right. Now, also around this time, you also had the VHS format. Absolutely. Now, the VHS format had a huge run. It was both sold and manufactured for decades. Complete decades, which is wonderful to know. This format is very iconic. For example, I've seen many wonderful t-shirts and online memes that show quite a few formats that have become very iconic lately. That would be, for example, VHS, also the floppy disks. Now, I do plan to show you my collection of floppy disk formats. I own many different versions, many different capacities. But I really want to focus on the video for now. So yeah, compared to these two, obviously, well, this is very similar to beta, that's for sure. I mean, actually beta's a little bit shorter, a little bit smaller. Now, resolution-wise, it's pretty much the same. Now, there was a time where there was the beta 1 option. Now that option, not every single machine had that option, but it actually lets you record in more resolution than VHS if you record in the beta 1. Now, unfortunately, you won't have as much runtime. You'll have half as much. For example, it won't be possible to store as much runtime if you record in the beta 1. But if you record in the beta 1, you're going to get a whole lot more resolution than 240 or 250 scan lines, like this guy can. So these were definitely sold and manufactured around the same time. They did exist around the same time. Also, the laserdisc. Now, the laserdisc. Okay, I do collect and I still use the laserdisc. Now, these two, they were sold and manufactured around the same time. Okay, now, resolution-wise, this one definitely has more resolution than the VHD. Now, this will actually last a lot longer because there's no physical contact. This is laser based. So as long as you don't get, for example, disc rot, which does happen. I do own a few video discs that will be laser discs that happen to have disc rot. You might be thinking, well, you have some discs with disc rot. Why don't you just get rid of them and replace them? Well, the thing is that some titles in this format, the laserdisc, they're incredibly rare. So even though they have disc rot, I still use them. Now, if you happen to have laserdiscs that have disc rot on them, there are specific models of laserdisc players that will kind of eliminate, not completely, they'll eliminate greatly the disc rot. That will be the artifact. There are these white colored sporadic artifacts that come out all over the screen. Now, if you happen to have a laserdisc that has a lot of disc rot on it, I would really recommend you try to use a newer laserdisc player. Try not to use the older type, because the older type, they produce a lot more resolution. They don't have many filters that the newer ones have. The newer filters, they were able to filter out that late disc rot noise. All right, now these two formats, they're very similar, but they're not identical. Now this is both the American and European released CED format. Let me really focus right here. It says, you probably know this. This format, I consider it very common. That's another reason why I don't make many videos regarding this format. I really try to focus on the rare ones. It says CED, capacitance electronic disc system. Capacitance, yes, that's how it works. It actually uses a stylus. Unlike a record, a vinyl record for audio, instead of the stylus moving sideways via the grooves, the stylus for this format actually moves up and down. They call that capacitance. Now regarding these two formats, the resolution on them, okay, I would love to show you via physical video, but I really don't want to get in trouble with the whole copyright thing regarding these titles. They're incredibly similar, but this one has many more advantages compared to this one. For example, the amount of pressure that the stylus places on a VHD is a lot less. That means you get many, I'm gonna say thousands of times more runtime on a VHD compared to a CED. Also, the amount of wear and tear on a VHD is a lot less than a CED. For example, I haven't actually timed it myself. For example, I do own brand new sealed CED discs. You can still buy brand new factory sealed ones. Now sometimes they become incredibly expensive, but it is possible. If you type in sealed CED, you will find a few titles that are nice and sealed. I've noticed that after about 20 playbacks, somewhere in there, you'll start seeing artifacts. And those artifacts are part of the wear and tear. The amount of pressure that the stylus places on this Videodisc system is quite a bit compared to this one. Now, I do own VHD players. I didn't place them on my table. I might do that in the near future. Show my collection of VHD players. Okay, now let me really focus on this format. Especially this disc. This is the main reason why I'm making this video. I want to show this title in a lot of detail because there are no images, let alone a video regarding this specific title. Now, regarding collecting horror films, there's a huge market. The prices, they don't go down. They only go up. They get higher. Any video title, even if it's disc-based or videotape-based, the value of it absolutely goes up with the passing times. Because some collectors, they'll pay incredibly high prices for some of these titles. Okay, so this is A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors. Now, I'm going to tell you, this is my own opinion. This is actually my favorite of all the installments for quite a few reasons. For example, the fact that I actually saw this in theaters. Now, my parents, they were very lenient based on the films that I saw. For example, this actually was released back in 1986. Around that time, I was about 4 years old. Now, when you're 4 years old, you really shouldn't be watching such a film. But my parents, they let me watch these kind of films. And that's another reason why I love this genre of film so much. Because it really reminds me of my childhood. Both the horror. I used to watch many horror and sci-fi films when I was a kid. So this is what I mostly collect. I do collect other genres, but most of my collection is regarding both horror and sci-fi. Now they did a wonderful job with the presentation on this video. It's amazing. Look at this very dreamy look that it has with this sort of like lightning, very dark looking. It leaves a lot of room for imagination. You don't see exactly how his face looks. It kind of lets you kind of wonder. Very nice, like bright, dreamy looking lightning bolt right here. Now I'm going to give you a few spoilers, not many. For example, you might not have seen this film yet. I'm going to say just a few things about this film. It's quite gruesome. I mean, compared to the original, compared to the second installment, this is one of the most gruesome ones because of some of the horror scenes that are quite creepy and disgusting. And that's one of the reasons why I love it so much. Okay, so it says a Robert Shea production, A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors. Now every single installment had sort of like a name. Part 3 happened to have the name Dream Warriors. Mostly because each of the actors, well, technically they weren't actors. They were the cast members. Each one, they had sort of like a superpower. See, this is kind of like a spoiler. They had their own superpower when they were asleep, and they would use those superpowers against this guy, which is Freddy Kreuger. Okay, starring Heather Langenkamp. Okay, that's wonderful to read because obviously the first installment had Heather Langenkamp. But this one has a very short sort of cameo where she kind of warns the children about Freddy because she knows how he thinks. He knows how his mind works. He helps these children along the way. But it also has Patricia Arquette, the beautiful Patricia Arquette. Now, she was sort of like the main character in this installment. Part 3, Dream Warriors. It also had Larry Fishburne, Priscilla Pointer, and Craig Wasson. Special appearances, Don Saxon, Dick Cavett, and Zaza Gabor. And Robert Englund as Freddy Kreuger. Yes, Robert Englund. Now, he was Freddy for most of the films in this series. Not all of them. For example, the very last one that was made, it didn't show Robert Englund. It was another actor. Now, regarding that last film that was made regarding this series, a lot of people don't like it. I do, for a few reasons. Now, some people don't like it because it really lacked that sort of comedy that the others had regarding Freddy. For example, on that last one, Freddy was kind of like he wasn't that comedic regarding. He was sort of very serious kind of a character, which is fine. Now, one of the reasons why I really liked the last one, it really answered many questions. Because beyond being sort of like a prequel and a sequel, it was both. The very last installment regarding this film, it was both a prequel and sequel in one. It answered a lot of questions regarding why was Freddy like that? Why did he think like that? Why did he want to do such horrible things? And also another reason why I liked the last one so much, it really brought closure to this series. It was a wonderful way to close that book, close that page. I really like the last one. A lot of people don't like it. I do, because it brought closure. It really answered many questions. All right, let me go ahead and show you the top. Let me really focus right here. It says, okay, kind of zoom in right here. There you go. Videodisc. A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 3. Dream Warriors. obviously VHD format. Once again, that's the very special numbers that you should save. VHP 49517. This is the hype sticker. I'm going to leave that alone. It's something very nice to see. For example, regarding CDs, regarding audio cassettes, when they happen to have a hype sticker like this, it absolutely gives it more value. All right, let me show you the back side of this. As you can see, it has the original plastic covering. Now, they did a wonderful job regarding the presentation here. For example, you won't see the specific images on the laserdisc, the VHS, the beta. No, absolutely not. They use different images, which makes this a little bit more special. Right here, we happen to see the very iconic Freddy. He's kind of crossing his arms right there, showing like he's the boss. He's ready to rock and roll. He's not playing around. Very gruesome images right here. For example, this is a decapitation scene. It's a very short scene in the film. This happens to be her mother. This is a scene where, yeah, I mean, I was a little kid when I watched this, so yeah, I did get nightmares. But now that I'm older, I'm actually 40 years old now. Whenever I buy vintage films, I really try to focus on the horror and the sci-fi because it really reminds me of my childhood. This is a scene where Freddy, he kind of pops out of a television and he grabs her and he kind of shoves her right into the screen. It's a very gruesome scene. I love it. I love that horror stuff. Now, this is Freddy being kind of attacked by one of the children with their superpowers. One of the kids' superpowers, he actually can generate sort of this lightning out of his hands. Now, this scene right here is quite gruesome, sort of like a cannibalism scene. Freddy kind of becomes sort of like a snake, and he's sort of like eating her. Yeah, you won't find this image on the laserdisc, the VHS, the beta. No, but you will find it on the VHD. Now, something very wonderful to see here. It says digital process. For example, I seriously doubt that the CED format used a digital process, because these were actually pressed with copper templates. Now, there's many forums that they kind of ask, where are those templates? They must be somewhere. There must be sort of like a warehouse with the original templates regarding this video disc. Those copper templates were actually pressed next to this PVC vinyl material to create this, which was a very inexpensive process. That's why the price. Okay, now the price of these guys was very low compared to other formats. For example, the beta format was more expensive, and also the VHS and beta were more expensive than this guy, because this was actually pressed. It was very easy to manufacture. It's a lot easier to press something than to create many feet worth of videotape. This takes a long time. You almost have to record it in real time. This one, you only press it and you just wait until it dries and it's ready to go. All right, let me show you a little bit more information regarding this. Dates. It's wonderful to see these dates, because when I saw these dates, they were kind of like, I couldn't believe them. Okay, take a look at this date right here. Let me try to really focus right there. It says copyright 1988 Warner Home Video. And the film itself, it says copyright 1987 New Line Cinema Corporation. Okay, for some reason, New Line Cinema and Warner Brothers, they did sort of like a partnership. They worked together. Okay, 1988. This video disc that I'm holding right here, it was in fact sold back in 1988. Now, by the time 1988 came around, this format was really not sold anymore. For example, the very last CED video disc that was sold was back in 1986, and it wasn't a film. It was sort of like a mini documentary, which was called The History of CED, where it kind of showed you how these were made in the factory, how this format came about. It took many, many decades for this format to be released to the public. Which, if this format, I mean, I've read this, if this format had been released about 10 years before, it would have become incredibly successful. Because by the time this format was released, you already had many different other formats, which had advantages compared to this. All right. Now, since this is so rare, let me go ahead and open it and show you a lot of detail. Okay, let me go ahead and kind of place it on top of my table so I can really focus in on it. Now, I'm very proud to own this video disc right here in the VHD format, which I also collect. All right, let me go ahead and open this guy. Put this aside. Now, I didn't know this, but there's quite a few differences on the very last VHD discs that were sold. I don't know if you know that. I want to show you that. All right, let me go ahead and open this guy. Okay, there we go. Now, unlike the CED format, these never actually came in a sort of exterior housing, cardboard housing. These were pretty much sold the way you're looking at them, with a simple plastic covering. That was it. Now on the VHD, they actually came with this sort of cardboard housing. It's white colored inside. Very high quality cardboard. Very nice, very good condition. All the corners are nice. They're not dented or damaged. Before I show you the insert, let me show you the disc itself. Okay. Now the later generation VHD video discs, they changed the material that they used. They opted for sort of like this frosted, translucent material, which is wonderful. I really like it. I really like the fact that you can see the interior disc itself. It's a very dark colored disc, unlike, for example, the laserdisc. Now, since the laserdisc works on the basis of lasers, it has to reflect. That would be the laser. So you can see myself right there. You can see this is my kitchen, my upper cabinets. Now these were a bit smaller. For example, I'm placing that laserdisc on top of that VHD. Notice that it's wider. It's bigger. This takes up more real estate space compared to that guy. That's the VHD format. Let me show you another VHD disc that was released before this guy, so you can kind of see the differences between them. I want to make this video as detailed as possible because I don't make videos regarding this format quite often. So let me go ahead and open another VHD. Okay, this is the Thing, John Carpenter's 1982 horror / sci-fi film. I love owning this one as well. I own this one in many different formats. I also own it, the soundtracks. I own the soundtracks on, that would be audio cassette. Quite a few different versions of audio cassette. I happen to love magnetic media. Let me go ahead and open this guy. Now this particular title was released before the Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, for sure. Because like I told you, this film was released in 1982. Let me kind of show you that. Now this This title right here is not too difficult to find. You'll find it. Notice right here, it says copyright 1982 Universal City Studios, all rights reserved. It's showing you sort of like the price. That's quite different. Right here it says 7,800. Notice that on the Nightmare on Elm Street, it showed a different price. Right here it says 4,950. Well, that makes sense. For example, in the infancy of any video format, even Blu-ray, even DVD, whenever it's in its infancy, obviously the price is going to be higher because it's a much difficult manufacturing process. For example, over the time, the manufacturing process becomes more efficient. So obviously the prices drop. For example, I have bought this film in the 4K Blu-ray format, and I've been amazed at the fact that it only cost $16. Now, obviously, when the Blu-ray format was released, they didn't cost $16. They were very expensive. They were almost $40, $50 each. Okay, let me open this guy. I'm not going to focus too much on this one because you'll find images and information on this particular disc online very easily. I just want to show you sort of like the differences. Okay, on these early generation VHD discs, they opted for that sort of like, well, it's not white, it's sort of like this beige color to it. That's the material used. On these later generation, much later, like I tell you, this was released back in 1988, they opted for that sort of translucent, frosted, clear material. I mean, they're both fine because they're both doing their job. Their job is pretty much to protect, house the disc itself. I mean, this looks nicer to me. This looks more sort of like professional when something lets you see the interior parts. But that's just me. Now, on these later generation, the early generation, they always use this sort of like weird yellowish sticker on there. On this later generation, they opted for this sort of like this white colored one. I kind of like that one better. Let me really focus right here. Like I told you, there's not much images, let alone a video regarding this specific title. I mean, you might be able to read Japanese. I don't know how. It's a very difficult language to learn. You might know what this says right here. I want to show this in a lot of detail. All right here it says Warner, which is quite interesting. Warner Brothers, Warner Home Video. All right, let me show you the rear. All right, you have that number again right there, which really helps you find the specific title. Now you also had that on the early generation discs. Let me show you where that was. Right there in the rear corner. They all had a number like I told you. This happens to be the VHP 49517. This one has a number as well. All right, I guess that's it for the disc itself. I could go ahead and open these and show you the actual disc, but I mean, that has been done. There are many videos regarding this format. I just want to show this specific title because it's quite difficult to find. All right, put that aside. Now let me go ahead and show you the insert. Now all of these VHD discs, they always came with an insert and they were always black and white. They never had color on them. I don't know why. I would think that if these were actually printed in color, they would have sort of like the more impact. But for some reason, they never had color. They were always just simple black and white. Very opaque, not very shiny. Place that right there. I feel that there are no images online. I mean, at least not what I've been able to find regarding this insert. Let me show you another one. This happens to be the insert for the Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. So even though this insert was released in 1982 and this one was released in 1988, they're both in black and white. They never actually released inserts, like I told you, in color. It's the same type of paper, very thin, very opaque colored, not much of a shine to it. Okay, let me show you a lot of detail right here. We have Freddy right there, a very dark looking image. Very nice. All right, let me go ahead and show you the inside. Like, too, there's not many. Yeah, that still scares me to this day. I mean, that's a pretty gruesome sight to see. I love the fact that when they made this film, they didn't use, for example, computer generated effects. These were actual physical effects. For example, that's an actual mask, that's actual makeup that the actor Robert Englund is using. It takes a lot of time, a lot of dexterity. I'm pretty sure he's sweating under all of that makeup. It gives you a much better image. I mean, you can always, I'm gonna say fake these kind of effects with a computer, but you can't really compare them to the physical special effects. See how he has those antennae coming out of his head? I mean, televisions, they don't use antennas anymore. Everything's pretty much digital based. They don't really require these huge antennas. Look at that iconic, that would be a tube type television that he's coming out of. They did a wonderful job regarding the presentation. It's showing the staff members, the cast. For example, many laserdiscs, they don't come with this kind of information. This has a whole lot of Japanese writing, which I really can't read. Perhaps you can read this. Look at this. This has Heather Langenkamp. She did sort of like a cameo on this installment, which is wonderful to see. And that right there is actually Freddy's, his bones. He's sort of like coming back to life. Very gruesome. Now this is the rear of this insert. Yeah, I remember this scene. It's well, actually, many horror films, many times, more often than not, they sort of have these sexual aspects to them. This was actually sort of like a sexual scene, but all of a sudden it becomes very horrific, which is quite shocking. Now, I'm a huge fan of the Japanese horror. That would be video games. Specifically the Silent Hill series. Now on the Silent Hill series, now I've read this by the actual creators of those series, the Silent Hill series. They state that for us as humans, both sex and horror are they're very powerful feelings. So when the Silent Hill series came out, they absolutely used both sexual as well as horror themes on it. All right. So hopefully that really helps you find this title. I really wanted to show it in a lot of detail. Like I told you, it's probably not going to be cheap. For example, I paid $214, and that's not including the shipping. Now, whenever you buy from the Yahoo Auctions, the shipping is not going to be cheap, especially if you live in the United States. I mean, obviously, it'd be a lot cheaper if you live, for example, in Japan itself or in Europe. But the fact that I live in California, in San Jose, California. The shipping for this guy, it was quite expensive. It was almost $30, $30 shipping. All right. Now let me go ahead and deviate just a little bit. Now I might get more into detail regarding these machines in another video. I mean, since I have them already up here, I'm going to tell you a few things about them. Now this was the first machine that I purchased. I purchased this one about 3 years ago. It was not cheap. It was quite expensive. Now this one cost me $850. Now there's a reason for that. The condition is incredible. The physical condition on it. There's very few minor scratches and etches. It's complete. This was actually restored by a professional. He sells on eBay. He lubricates the internal parts, he changes the belts, he adjusts the timings on many parts. For example, I know videotape machines very well, but regarding video discs, that would be both laserdisc and for example, the CED format, the VHD format, I really don't know how to adjust them myself. That's why I paid so much for this particular one. This happens to be the remote for it. Okay, this one happens to be the RCA. Obviously, the RCA branded video disc player. Now the model number for this guy. I actually happen to have the manual for that one. That's another reason why it costs so much. Why it would cost $850. Because it came with the manual. See right here it says SJT 300. Now this was one of the it wasn't the very last one made by RCA, but it was one of the last ones made. So it performs very well. Now this is a remote for it. There's not many things to move around on it. For example, it does have high-speed scan. Like I told you, I really try to avoid using it because I know that whenever you use such a feature, it will place a little bit more wear and tear on your discs. It also has visual search and it also has pause. That's it. Not many things to move around on this particular remote. Let me go ahead and turn that guy around. If you don't believe me that this is the very wonderful SJ. Now there was the SKT, but there was also the SJT. I believe the SJT were made between January and July, somewhere in there, and the SKT series were released later in that same year. After July till December, you had the SKT 300. I love this format. It's just so weird. I mean, it really shouldn't work, but it does. The fact that video is stored onto PVC vinyl, it's so weird. That's one of the reasons why I love it so much. Okay, let me go ahead and flip this guy around and show you the rear label. Now this model does have a few advantages. For example, the very early models, that would be, for example, the RCA the 100 series, the 150, the 200 series, they didn't have the composite video out. They only had this coaxial. Now you'll definitely get a better picture out of this composite output. That's one of the advantage of this particular model. The fact that it has composite, you get a much sharper image. Not much though. I mean, this format is very limited regarding its resolution. The resolution is very low. It's lower than VHS, for example. And for example, if you happen to have a video disc that's pre-owned, you're going to see a whole lot of artifacts all over the place. It's sort of like one of the downsides of this format. It had a lot of wear and tear on it. So right here it says SJT300. Now this is the serial number, and I have no problem showing you that serial number. I believe that these old machines, they should be accounted for. I've said that in the past. Now this is the serial number 319236092. This is the CED player that I use the most. I do have others, but I don't use them as often. I use this one the most. Now this series, it actually has a, it doesn't have a belt on its main motor. And that's another advantage. The fact that it doesn't have a belt, that means that you're never going to have to replace that belt. It actually uses a brush, and it has wonderful technology. It has a brushless DC motor system. It's a direct drive. That means that the motor is placed exactly below the discs. When that motor spins, it's a direct movement between the motor and the disc itself. That means there's no timing issues, for example, with a belt. For example, if the belt is loose, if it's slipping, it also produces a wonderful sound. You might know this. If you collect this format, you'll know that when you have a direct drive CED player, it produces a very particular sound. It sort of sounds like, well, if you were around during the 80s, you'll probably know this. The radios on some car stereos, whenever you use, for example, the AM radio, your car alternator would create interference, which you can hear on the radio. It was sort of like this sound. You'll hear that whenever you're playing a CED disc on this one. It's not that annoying. It's not that loud either, but it's something very special. For example, a Blu-ray disc or a DVD, it won't give you that kind of feedback, that sound that this guy gives you. Obviously, the laserdisc also makes a sound, but it's a different sound. It's more of like a continuous sound. This one's sort of like a dun 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 dun, especially when it starts up. It's a wonderful sound when it starts up because it starts very slow and kind of speeds up. It's sort of like dun 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 dun, and then it's continuous sound. I would love to. It's very difficult to capture it via a cell phone, that sound, because I don't have a professional microphone. But if you collect this format, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so that's the SJD300 series. This is the one that I use the most often. Like I tell you, whenever I play a video disc in this format, I just play them through. I try to avoid the pause button. I try to avoid, for example, the high-speed scan. Alright, I was going to leave that right there, and let me show you this other model, which was not cheap either. These are quite expensive because they perform very well compared to other models. Okay, now this right here is the SJT400. Now, if you collect this format, you know how special this one is, because this is like the absolute last model that was made, at least by RCA. Now, there were many different brands that made this format, not just RCA. For example, the other brands that made this format included, for example, Realistic, for example, Milo, for example, Hitachi. There were many different brands, but at least actually RCA was the original inventor of this format. They worked on it for many decades. It was not easy to release it to the public. They had many downsides. For example, they really struggled to be able to store as much runtime. For example, this wasn't the only video disc format that existed. There were others. For example, in Europe, you had the TED disc. That's the letter T, the letter E, and the letter D. But unfortunately, on the TED disc format, you could only store a few minutes. It was less than half an hour per disc. Imagine having to use about 4 discs for a single title. That would be very cumbersome. Okay, let me show you this guy in a lot of detail. Now, obviously, you have a few differences between the 300 series and the 400. For example, the top cover. This is a black colored top. This is a sort of like the silver colored top. I actually like this one a little bit more because I really like that sort of like silverish look to it compared to this one. Now, they both have that very iconic, very 80s. This one has a silver side to it, but on the 300 it doesn't have a silver side. It has a simulated wood grain finish right here. It's not the best simulated wood grain. On some other simulated wood grains, you actually had indentations, which makes it look a little bit more realistic. I mean, but it's fine. All right, so that's sort of like one of the differences. Now, let me go ahead and flip this guy around just in case you don't believe me that this is a very special, very iconic RCA 400 series. All right, so I flip that guy around. All right. So that's the label on this guy. It's the SJT 400, the 400 series, which is pretty much the last one that was made. Actually, after the SJT 400 was made, they made the SKT 400. This is the serial number 411226139. I have no problem showing you that one. Okay, now picture quality wise, between these two guys, it's the same thing. For example, I can't tell you, oh, if you buy the 400 series, you're going to get a better picture. Not really. It's the same picture, but this one has a lot more features. Now take a look at this remote. You've probably seen this remote already. You'll find many images online and even videos regarding this remote. Let me really compare it to the 300 series. Yeah, they look very different. This is sort of like a long shape to it. This is sort of like a more of a square shape to it. You can use both of your hands on this guy. This sort of has like this cover right here, which covers a whole lot of buttons. This is not in mint quality, but it's pretty good. Okay, now this has many features. Now there is one feature that I really love because it helps clean your disc. Yes, one way of cleaning for example, if you have a disc that has a lot of skipping, a lot of artifacts, you can fix that, for example, by just playing it through. But it doesn't get rid of all of the dirt and specks that are on there. For example, I've played back some discs up to 4 times, and I keep seeing the same artifact at the exact same time. The way that I was able to remedy that is by using this 400 series, because this one has a feature right here that'll you can say it kind of scrubs your discs. Now, I would only use this sparingly. For example, if you just bought a video disc and it's your first time playing it, I would play it back in a 400 series and just keep an eye out for those artifacts, for those skips. As soon as you see a very big artifact, or if it starts skipping, go ahead and use this feature. More often than not, it's going to fix that problem. Okay, this has a button that says forward advance. That actually moves forward a single frame. For example, you can't do that on this guy, on the 300 series. You can on this. You can move forward a single frame. By moving forward a single frame, you'll be able to remove whatever's on there. It might be dust, it might be dirt. It doesn't always work. Most often than not, it does. I'm gonna say, I mean, you might have a different opinion regarding this. I'm gonna say about somewhere between 60 and 75% of the time, you'll be able to fix both skipping and artifacts by using this forward advance feature, using a 400 series. It's one of the many reasons why I happen to own a 400 series. For example, I could go ahead and just own a 300 series, but I own both a 300 and a 400 because I don't use this guy as often. I only use this guy when I happen to have a disc that has a lot of both artifacts and skipping to it. This guy can remedy those problems more often than not. Like I told you, it's somewhere between 60 and 70% of the time, which is a big deal. I mean, to be able to remove between 60 and 70% of both the artifacts and the skipping nuisance of a disc is a huge deal, because it's not like these discs are still being manufactured. Some titles, there's not that many that are still around because they've been thrown away, they've been recycled, they have become e-waste. All right, so I think that's pretty much it for this video. Like I told you, I try to give you as much information. I always try to make videos nice and long, nice and detailed. But this was my main reason of making this video. I'm very proud owner of this particular title in this particular format, which I also collect. That will be the Japanese released VHD format. Thank you so much.